Well, good evening, everyone. Just welcome to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. And as you know, this is a joint partnership between Better Futures Australia and the Indigenous Peoples Organisation to bring together this webinars to look at climate change and how it's affecting us, but more importantly, how we can bring our voice into this much more powerfully, much more stronger through these seminars, and take what we're learning from these webinars to feed into the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow in November 2021, at the end of this year actually, but also to look at the ways in which we can advocate towards our own government here to make sure that they also change their attitudes and their behaviours towards country, particularly our country, and make sure that we can leave for our future generations a country that we can all be proud of and they can be proud of. We've got 3 wonderful speakers tonight. I can't wait to hear them. And I'll introduce each of them shortly. But just to remember that if you have any questions to any of the panelists tonight, just put them either in the Q&A chat box or in the chat itself, and we'll see if we can answer them. Tonight we've got Leighton Lee. He's going to be speaking about the impact of global warming on country and burning. Ernie, well, we all know Ernie. I'll introduce him shortly. And he will be speaking from his own heart and his own journeys along this particular space. And then we also have Jonathan. But first of all, let me just introduce you to our very first speaker in Leeton. Lee. Now, where'd you go, Leeton? I had you up here in a minute ago. Well, Leeton is, he's an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artist based in Queensland. And he began his painting journey in early 2013, and he is developing his art continuously. His paintings are both stories that have been told to him and stories of his personal journey. He's worked in his artworks into fabrics, clothing, bookmarks, greeting cards, and homewares. Leighton's on a life journey to revitalise his culture and learn the old ways of making weapons, tools, and instruments, as well as bush medicines, foods, tracking, and using natural materials to make string baskets, fish traps, shelters. But also working with our young people through various organisations and schools. He's trying to pass on the knowledge and the culture for the next generation. He's one very cool dude, and we're so thrilled to have him tonight. And tonight he's also a part of working with the Firesticks Dreaming people. So without further ado, Lee, it's over to you.
G'day, thanks, Hung. Yeah, my name's Leighton Lee. I'm a Thungati Bundjalung Mwalgal man, currently living on Wanjarabara country. So I just want to acknowledge country before I start here. And also just acknowledge all my many teachers I've had over the years. Having a look at where we are at the moment, we're kind of in a bit of at a crossroads at the moment, where we've got climate change and a lot of mismanagement on a lot of country for the last 100 years or so, or even longer in some areas. When we're talking about country and safety, we've only got to have a look at what happened in the 2019-2020 fires to see, you know, what the reality of where we're heading is if we don't start having a look at changing things. My current role at the moment is with Firesticks Alliance. We work all across the country, working with traditional owner groups to help restore and revitalise the cultural fire back on country, and empower traditional owners to actually take back the lead when it comes to fire on their country. We have many different explanations to fire. At the moment, we've got, you hear terms of back burning, hazard reduction burning, ecological burns, all this different language around fire, but the reality of it is that we only have two fires, the right fire and the wrong fire. Some of the benefits that are actually coming from having the right fire and working with traditional owner groups all over the place is not only the benefits for the country, because as you know, been discussed, is there's a whole heap of issues around water and industry and things like that that happen in Australia. Fire is another thing, but they're all connected. They're all connected in together, and fire and water go together. But fire in particular is very central as well to all of our learning and all of our knowledge systems, whether we're talking about foods, medicines, materials, songs, dreamings, as well as understanding relationships between people, animals, and the landscape itself. When we look at the benefits for people, especially for traditional owners, being able to get back out on country, we're looking at the social benefits. So the social benefits for people to actually be out on country, practicing culture as we have been for the last thousands of years, is massive, massive for mental health. It's massive for confidence, and it's also connecting people in together, because it's not just about one group of people. What the Right Fire is actually doing is bringing people together, so we're able to heal people and communities at the same time as the landscape. And all it's doing is working with an understanding of how things are supposed to be, and sharing some of that. When we look at the Right Fire for country, we're talking about many, many different diverse landscapes on various landforms and soils with different trees and different grasses, and they all have interconnected relationships. Each one of those relationships need to be nurtured. And what we find for a lot of what we're seeing in current practices at the moment is this isn't happening. Most of the fire that happens on the landscapes now are either arson or just the wrong fire that's only burning for hazard reduction. And we can't keep going down the path like that. So we really need to start listening to a lot of traditional owners in listening to what they have to say, especially when it comes to about managing issues on their country. I think we've in a place at the moment. The NAIDOC theme for this year is Heal Country. I see a lot of these themes sort of come and go, but it's a forever thing. If we don't start the process of actually coming back and listening to what the First Nations people are saying, then we're not actually going to move anywhere forwards anywhere soon. The relationships that exist between people, the animals, whether that's breeding cycles or migration, the curing of the various grasses in different places, or the germinating of seeds for trees, or the fruits or medicines that we need, is all specific around timing, and it's all specific around what we would call our seasonal calendars, which shift and move. So it's not like a rigid calendar that we see now. And we need to, when we look at any kind of climate change intervention, we need to actually start looking to the past to see where we need to actually start moving forwards with the future. I see a lot of hope and positivity across what I'm doing at the moment, working with communities. The main area that I'm working in is Southeast Queensland, so working with a lot of different groups in Southeast Queensland, as well as all up the eastern seaboard. But I think we need to start working together. These things won't happen. We can't just leave all these different things to one group. So the approach of how we tackle any of these issues, from water to fire to clearing and things like that, need to be a collaborative approach that we start having a look at and start working out a path forwards. But yeah, that's a bit about what it is that I'm doing in that space, and there's a whole heap more coming with training programs across the country as well, where we can hopefully build up a network of, we want to see 100 fire practitioners across the country in the next couple of years.
Thanks,
busy bloke, eh?
Yeah, brother.
Yeah.
I like that notion. One of the characteristics of being Indigenous is we like to walk backwards into the future, because the past is as much as important to us as the present as well as the future. Brother, what do you see as some of the challenges for local communities when it comes to the issues that you've just raised with us?
Policy, especially working with any agencies. Most of the real progress that I've seen is happening on that community level. So you've got private property owners, you've got council, you've got national parks, RFS, and traditional owners on a community level coming together to work out, how they can start doing things. But what makes it really, really difficult is it's got to come from the top, where we get some of those policy changes to actually allow some of the progress to move forwards.
When you say from the top, is that state government as well as federal, or both?
Yeah, both.
And are you getting any traction there with any of those kind of policy changes?
No, we're having conversations, but most of it's just been on that community level, and that's probably where the greatest will is and the greatest interest. But I think in terms of what the state government or federal government could be doing as well is actually, rather than just some funding, actually allocate some real funds into long-term programs where it's First Nations run and led, and actually, give us a chance, because we've got thousands and thousands of years of knowledge that we can actually do, and in the process, we're actually bringing people together as well.
You're right there. I mean, you've got 60,000 years of knowledge and wisdom and history here, and we can't allow the last 200 years, or I think from your case too, we've only brought this particular fire stick management back into vogue within the last, 20 years, 10 years? How long?
Yes. There's been work happening for the last couple of decades in working with communities to restore that fire knowledge. But yeah, more probably even the last 2 years, the jump from where the interest was before in the last 2 years we've just been inundated with requests for training and workshops and things like that. But that's part of the reason why it's so important to have 100 fire practitioners across the country who are able to do that work competently and confidently.
And do you see a lot of young people taking this on?
I see interest from young people, but that's going to be the real key is engaging those young people and keeping those guys involved, or guys and girls, involved. It's practicing culture. At the end of the day, it's it's practicing culture and bringing people back into to connect with country, and not only the health benefits but the spiritual benefits to that too, in their own spirit, are just so big that we need to try and keep that going with the next generation, because it's no good, a group of us do stuff now and in 30 years there's nobody left to do it again.
There is a question here from Teresa asking Lee, what changes in the season have the traditional owners noticed due to climate change, and where should funding and efforts be focused first to help this?
I think some of the changes are for example, this year, especially in Queensland here, and I know parts of New South Wales, there's been an extended wet. So our wet season has shifted all the way around. So I've actually had my mulberry tree give me 2 lots of mulberries this year, which has been nice. But we're seeing a lot of, so those seasonal changes and things like that come down to a lot of what we call our seasonal or cultural indicators. So when we see particular flowers come out, we might know that the mullet's running in a particular area, so we'd start making our way down towards the waters. Or when we start seeing those changes, what happens is we adjust our practice or our movement according, and that can be moving forwards or backwards. So that's where we can't be too focused on being stationary. We have to always be flexible to move with the time. As far as what needs to be put into place, we need to support a lot of the traditional owner organisations who are already active out in the space, as well as supporting other traditional owner groups who are wanting to do stuff, and to actually start engaging and listening to what it is that First Nations people have to say.
Look, mate, I know there's going to be some more questions coming through. Actually, there's heaps of them. But I want to go over to Johnsy now. He's up there in Cairns at the moment, living it up, living the dream. We're down here in Sydney in lockdown. We can't even get out the door. If we go out the door, we might get $1,000 fine. Pardon me. But let me introduce Johnsy. Johnsy actually is like a son to me, and we both work together for an organisation called Red Dust Role Models. But we've also been involved in so many other things out there in the desert area with our desert people, the Pintabee, the Luricha, and all that mob out there. Johnsy is a qualified teacher, and one of the things that I've always enjoyed with my work with Johnsy was to go out into Owen Springs there at the Juvie Justice Centre there and just sit down and teach the children. And I have never seen a much more qualified person to actually engage with our young people in those kind of situations. They almost eat out of his hands in terms of what he wants to teach them and how he wants to help them. But he's also a muso. He's got a couple of CDs out. I'll let him talk about that. He's also an alcohol and other drugs worker. He's a motor mechanic. If you want your car fixed, he'll come and fix it for you. He's also got his own radio program called Jam Packed, which is beamed throughout the whole country there with a whole heap of incredible speakers on there, including Ernie, who you'll be hearing from soon. He's a highly sought after speaker on Aboriginal education, remote community development, health and spirituality, and a whole range of other things. He's a local speaker. He's also a initiated young man from the Pintabee people. Johnsy, over to you, my brother.
Thanks, Jim. Well, I tell you, you don't have to say all that because I'm just a man, right? And all I got is another story. That's all. Thanks, Brother Leeton, there too, for sharing with us, brother. Yeah, it was really good to listen to you. And we could talk more about all that. That fire knowledge is so important, so important. Yeah, look, John Moore, thanks for introducing me. You might recognise this house. I'm gate crashing his house. Countrymen come from desert, escaping COVID, get the cans, get myself a brand new razor. Winter time, we don't know nothing about climate change. Shave my beard and my hair off, and I'm freezing. No sense, this bloke. No sense. If I introduce myself and pay respects out there, I identify as a Lurigi man from West Valley Springs. But as I get older and I get more grey hairs on my chin, and as I stick my head out of the sand like a sand goer, I started to get a little bit of criticism and lateral violence. You don't speak for Lurigi mob, you don't speak for us, kind of thing. And so I sort of had to revert back to my Phillips Bunjalung side of the family on my nana's side. And then I talk about my Javanese family, then my Dutch family, then my First Fleet Welsh family. I'm thinking, what story I've got to tell you about who I am that justifies my DNA, you know? And then Uncle Ernie there, he was sharing a story with us and the kids in Adelaide one time. He said, hey, just tell them you're full blood. Because when you hit your head with Kudra or Woomera or whatever it might be, Nulla, you get full blood come straight out of that noggin right there. So it doesn't matter what you call me as long as you don't call me late for a barbecue when the whiskey's gone warm, right? And I think when it comes to that issue of climate change in the bush, I've only got a couple of stories really, and I've made a few connections, and they could be long bow draws or they could be short. It's up to you. You decide. But stories and life experience is what for us really matters the most, because in those stories and those experiences they paint a picture. And I'll start with the first story because I took my young fellas, my son when he was about 6 or 7, way back when, and one of my nephews, so 2 sons again, you know, and they were both under 10. And we went to a Christian convention in Melbourne there, and Jamal Ray knows these. All those Christian conventions, every countryman gets together, and then they put on this Indigenous night, you know, they call it the blackout night or whatever, and it's just tokenistic sort of, we get up and sing gospel songs, and they're still their songs, but they're just in language, you know, like Amazing Grace, you know, and this sort of thing. And that they make out like, oh, that's really fabulous Indigenous-led ministry kind of thing, but really we're just parroting off the English words from what the missionary taught us. Anyway, this old man in Melbourne there, he got up and he said, oh, I want to welcome you to country. He was from that way, you know, from the, I think we're out at the Ranges, Geelong somewhere, eh? Or was it, I don't know if it was Geelong or the Grampians, one of the mountain ranges mob. Anyway, he said, I want to welcome you. So he welcomed us, and then he looked at the mob who were there from the desert and from the north and the south and the east and the west. And he said, I want you to give us a response. And I looked over at me 2 brothers there, 2 cousins, and one's, God bless him, since gone missing. His name's Michael Marr, brother from South Coast, New South Wales there. We don't know where he's gone. He's just gone missing. And we're praying for him. We're hoping that he's safe and he's right. Another fella called Charlie Hodgson, Jan Beginba, Arabana mob, and also from Darunda, from right up in Darwin side too. And I had my 2 sons there. And we looked at each other and said, hey, at our way, you can't do a response to country. You can't sing a song or dance, because in old people, that's traditional, that's old knowledge, you know, that's initiated knowledge. And we're sitting there thinking we might upset these mob. And I said, no, don't worry, we'll do something for him. We'll do something for him. And so we figured the next day we'll do it. So we went around that little community, and it was one of those little hillside communities, you know, that the blackest thing they see is their tea kettle, you know, sort of thing, when it's got a bit of soot on it. But anyway, we were going around looking for ochre. Couldn't find any. So we found this clay, this sort of hand clay that these mob were using, making pots and stuff out of them. We got some of that. We put some water in it. We put it on our faces like this and put a couple of different markings, you know. And we come out for the next day for this acknowledgement to sort of share with this old man that had welcomed us onto his country. And we said, here, Uncle, we've got a song for you, and we just wanted these young fellows to thank you for welcoming us on your country. And anyway, we come out, we jumped out, right? And you know that calamine lotion that Mum used to put on, your aunties used to put on you when you were little for mozzie bites and that? We looked like calamine people, because that ochre came out real pink. Then we jumped out like this, and there's calamine lotions, instead of turning red or ochre, it's pink. And I'm thinking, oh, we're silly people. Why are we doing this for? But we wanted to show that old man respect, right? Because he wanted us to say thank you for having us, and we didn't just want to say thank you for having us. Then we got up and I got the kids to dance and that, and the song goes like this. And Ernie would know, because we do this all the time with young people, right? Yo, bakala coño, marlo, barangay, bakala. Right, we should have done these songs, and these kids got up and they did that emu dance and that kangaroo dance. They did that emu and whatnot. And afterwards, everybody was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. You know, the white fellas all come up and said, oh, you know, you should be so proud of yourself. And that old man was touched. He was really happy. And this is going back to 15, 20 years, you know. So we didn't sort of do a lot of that that we'd seen anyway. And he said, thank you so much. And those old white fellas and the Christian mob were coming up to my sons, and they were saying, oh, you must be so proud of yourself. And my boys are looking up at these white people, and they're going, hey, oh, yeah, we're real proud. We're real proud. Hey, Dad, we're real proud. That's our culture. That's our culture. And they're saying, oh, yeah, you know, how long have you learnt that song? And they're asking all those questions about initiation. They all want to know this. I don't know this, whatever. It's almost like it's because it's sacred knowledge. They want to know it, you know. If only they just go get themselves a Tyndale book or a Tyndale map, and he'll tell them all about it. Anyway, and the boys looked over and he said, hey, Uncle, yeah, that's our dreaming, eh, Uncle? That's our dreaming. We've been doing that for thousands of years, eh, Uncle? In our dreaming time, eh, Uncle? Hey, Dad. And I'm looking at him thinking, yeah, son, yeah, in our dreaming time, all right. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, in my dreams last night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I come up with that little song. Don't worry about that. Anyway, the boys got older, and we initiated them the traditional way, right? We took them through law the proper way, right? And when they were about 16, 17, they come back to me and they said, hey, Dad, remember that dance we done? That wasn't right, eh? That was wrong, eh? That was wrong. And I said, why? Why do you think it's wrong? They said, because, you know, we're not allowed to talk about that churong, eh? You can't talk about that outside of bush camp, eh? That's law. We're not allowed to do that. And I said, yeah, it probably was wrong. I said, but those old people, they're not upset at us. And they said, why are they upset? I said, listen, son, I said, what was the most important thing about that day? What do you remember? And they said, we were real proud. I said, yeah, you was. We were real happy. I said, yeah, you was really happy, eh, jumping around. And all them white people, they made us feel really happy and welcome, eh? And I said, yeah, but what about that old man who welcomed us onto his country? How do you think he felt? And they said, oh, he felt really respected, eh? Respected. I said, yeah. I said, that's what culture is about to him. I said, look, sometimes we're going to have to break it. Sometimes we're going to have to make it up. Sometimes it's not going to be conventional. Sometimes, you know, it's traditional in the bush, and we're full proper negative. Sometimes it's in the cities, and we're doing it for an audience or whatever it might be. But I'd said to them young fellas, I said, sons, the important thing about culture is you're connected, and it's an expression of who you are, and it's a celebration of who you are. And the fact is, nobody else done it. That was us. That was your law. That was your culture. That was your tradition. And even to this day, I still don't know what those kids are thinking. They're probably thinking, oh, you make a shame job, eh? Dancing around like that in calamine lotion, singing songs that you just made up on the spot, you know, making us dance, the Indian dance sort of thing. And I think that's true. That's sometimes that's what we have to do to make ourselves feel proud as people. But if I look at the connection to country when it comes to the issue of water and of climate change, if I show you a really quick map, I don't know if I can share this map or not, but I want to show you a real quick one. Or maybe I can't do it. Doesn't matter. In our community, which is about 600k west of Alice Springs, so Ernie, I don't know which track you come up, whether you come up that old Warrakurna Desert Highway track, that old Gun Barrel Highway or not, or you go across the Nullarbor, or even maybe you might have come from the Pilbara, from the Telfer.
No, this morning I come out the bottom.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I come up from Cooper Beatty this morning.
Oh, from Cuba, right. Well, you would know, right across that western side, coming from WA, that Leighton Lee, Leonora country, Gun Barrel, Cosmo, Newbury, or even from all the motor country and everything, you come through and there's all those wells. And all the stories, as you know, many mob would know about, you know, old Canning, for example, you know, feeding them local mob all that salty meat and then follow them to water holes and then concreting them off and capping them off. All those stories all right through the desert country. But around our community of Kintor, so Wallangura, that Luricha side, Pindaby side, also goes into Kildakoy, right over the Coonawarragi, right into Western Australia. There's about at least a dozen water holes. Tenki, Nolman, Wojol, Cullen Benbar, all these water holes. And we grew up, you know, in the late 90s, and coincidentally when Jamal Ray there was at Pupanya, working at Pupanya, the king of Pupanya, King Brown country. And we were swimming in them. They were full. All of those water holes were full. And we were swimming them right through to all the 90s and the 2000s. And if you go back today, if you went back 5 years ago, every single one of those water holes is dry. And yet, when the young people talk about it, we talk about it as if it was in the olden days. Oh, in the olden days, Them mob used to survive, and they used to be in them water holes in the olden days. And then you'd talk to white fellas, and they'd come out, and like corporates and that, they'd come out and they'd say, "Oh, how did you mob survive in this desert country? How did you mob survive in this desert country? It's so hot, it's so hot." And they don't realise that it wasn't that hot. It wasn't that hot today, or back then, as it is today. And when we're talking about back then, we're only talking about, "Hey, first, I don't know, you know." Oh, that's probably not trying to guard off someone trying to steal grog from your house, Uncle. When we go back only 10 or 15 years ago, those waterholes were full, and now they're empty. Now they're completely dried up. And I can only put it down to one thing, other than what the science and all says. What I know is that we were connected to those places. We were going to them regularly. We were swimming in them regularly. We were talking about them regularly. We were laughing around them. We were having ceremony around them. We were making fires around them. We were hunting for, you name it, bunny rabbit, echidna or porcupine, you know, kangaroos, emus, and all sorts of things. If you go to those waterholes today, and this is only going back 5 or 10 years ago, there'll be nothing but camels, wild horses, donkeys. There'll be feral cats everywhere. And there won't be a single goanna, won't be a single cornea or the womma pythons or any of those black-headed pythons. There won't be a single thorny devil, won't be a single blue-tongued lizard. There won't be a single bilby or any of those sorts of things. And only the sand goannas or the ngindaka, the parenti lizards still survive. But they're the only things that are there. And we don't go back regularly. We don't have ceremony regularly. We're not there jumping around, enjoying ourselves, laughing, spending time with family, and being on country. And if you think about, the only thing that I can put that down to is when we talk about healing country, which is the theme for NAIDOC this week. It's like a baby. And some mob white fellas understand this. I say, you don't birth that baby and then you leave it be. And he said, "No, he's right. You grow up on his own. You spend time with that baby, you look after that baby, you take that baby everywhere." And that country is exactly the same. It's not an asset. It's not a resource. It's not an innate being or a synthetic sort of an object. It's an actual spirit. And that spirit that has given us life for all this time, that puts that blood in our veins and that air in our lungs, needs to be treated like a baby, and we need to be continually connected to it. Of course, it's not our baby. It's our mother. It's our grandfather. It's all our jumbo and all that sort of thing. But it's the connection to it. And the moment you lose that connection, being led by First Nations mob and the old people who taught us about those stories, that's when the country dies, and that's when it becomes sick. And in my experience, as we've come off the country, we've left it, it's dried up, and it's died, and then feral species are taken over, and we're worse off for it. My kids are, our grandkids will be, and so is that country. And that's just some stories I thought I'd share with you.
Mm.
Absolutely, Johnny. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, brother.
We're doing what we're doing in the Australian national anthem. We are girding this nation because we're leaving the centre and going out to the boundaries and forging a life in a competitive situation where everyone's sort of watching over their backs as to what they're doing, as to a time 40, 50 years ago, their parents were from the bush, didn't have to worry about looking over their back because they knew they had it covered or someone had it covered. Yeah, there's a lot has changed in that way. And I love the water stories, John, mainly because of the fact that I'd gone out to about 5 miles out to sea, and on a very low tide, the old man said to me, he said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And we waited for this reef to appear, and then at a very low tide, he pointed me in one direction and he said, "Give me a cup of water from there." And I'm going, "Don't be silly, old man, we're 5 miles out to sea, you're only going to drink salt water." He said, "No, that bubbling one there." And when the tide had gone back from there was this bubbling water 5 miles out to sea, and I got him a panic and filled his panicking up in it and took it back to him. And I said, "Go on, hopefully you drink it, because I'm not drinking, I'm freshwater man." And he goes, "This is freshwater, boy." And those knowledge of all those water holes all around the place. And yeah, John, all across that middle there, from Maru Mob into Pindaby side, all those water holes that they used to move bullocks across there. And Yeah, we used to follow those little zebra finch, where nyanyas or nyingaries, as we call them. And they start making a noise. We start chasing them and asking them where the water is, and because they'd be going in for their drinks. We still do that today, but yeah, the water holes are getting a little bit more drier. Either that or we getting too much carrying water bottles around in the car, Job. Yeah. No, it's those stories, especially the most important thing that I got out of that, and I totally agree with you, is not the water holes drying up and we're moving on. They're not drying off. We're not moving off because they're drying up. They're drying up because no one's there to look after them.
It's that relationship between people and the land.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got any hard solutions for that, Johnsy?
Get back on country. That outstations are not a lifestyle choice. Tell Mr. Rabbit, Tony Rabbit. I know it's expensive. It costs money. Yep.
The most important thing about getting back on country is, you can get back on country, but in order to get there, there's a lot of time and distance. What I do with a lot of my mob is sort of like 50 years ago, and that ain't that long ago. 50 years ago, them old fellas used to talk to us straight about stories, and they had a lot to share. And not just in our culture, but all the cultures around it. A lot of Mediterranean cultures are the same, where them old families used to sit around and talk about their family, the cultural, sing songs, do crafts, do all those artifacts. And especially in our mob, all them old storytellers, them old ladies and them old gentlemen that have given us all that stuff, they're either past or sitting back very, very quiet to see what we do with the stuff that they give us 50 years ago. Because they're not going to be around in 50 years' time when we get that diluted material that they've given us and diluted it down. The purest stuff that they've given us, that they got off their grandfathers, we're diluting it down. What are we going to give to kids in 50 years' time? How much, is going to be lost? So there are those things. I mean, a lot of areas in the southern part of our country and in the desert here, in the desert in the top end, we're sort of fine because every end of the year, every summer, there is ceremonies going on. And there are young bloods going through the law. And a lot of people don't know that is still going on. And to us, that is important to maintain that culture, to maintain that history, to learn about those water holes, to learn what vegetation is there anymore. Brother Leeton was saying a minute ago that, we need to go to the top. But the trouble is, with them mobbing at the top, they got no idea. They're just going to protect their jobs. They need people under them to give them information, and the people under them to give them information. And it goes right down to what is most important is grassroots. And if we are the grassroots people on the ground who could read the seasonal changes or see smell that rain when it comes. You can smell what's been going on over the last couple of months just by the scent in the smell of that first rain. That what we call when we call that the first rains that come through, you can hear and you can taste what was going on prior to those first rains. That's what's important, what we need to have a look at. There were scientific knowledge that everyone is giving to us, but there's scientific knowledge that Blackfellow Law, that's the university, that's the chemist, that's the kitchen, that's the supermarket. It's all there. But I don't know, this bloke called McDonald's, he got a lot more easy targeted. No more, like that
Hungry
lad
black,
says, no more
red
boomerang.
rooster.
No. Yeah. So
I
that,
think when we're,
Hey, listen, you fellas,
when we
I'm supposed to be introducing Ernie.
oh, sorry. I love it when them young blokes have got a voice like that.
Oh, mate,
said we're
they
having yarn
fire
around
us
fire.
up. Yeah, that's right, that's right. But to the 100 people out there who I just want to introduce Ernie this way. I knew Ernie
Make
back
it up. Make it up. I made it up.
I'm going to make it up. Yeah, let me make it up.
Good on.
Back in the when I was over in Perth living there in the 1980s, I was looking after a hostel there called Cooinda Hostel. And we had all the girls from up north there coming and staying with us. We were looking after them. And one day they told us that, you know, Ernie's playing down here in, I think it's the Belmore basketball court down there. And he has this little trick with the umpires that every time he gets a foul, he'd have 5 pairs of trousers on. He'd take one pair of trousers every time that, that he got a foul. And then he'd look at the reference and say, that's one. And we went down there to see if he'd get 5 fouls to take all his clothes off. But he didn't. He never did 5 fouls. You and Richard, greatest basketball players on the planet down there too. It was a wonderful time. That was my first introduction to Ernie. The second introduction was when you first started off as a comedian down there at the casino. And I snuck in there one night, you know, being an Aboriginal pastor, I was looking around to see if anyone else watched me, but I couldn't even give a stuff if they did or not. I just wanted to go and see Ernie at his first gig there as a comedian at the casino
Crown.
there in Perth. Yeah, the Crown, yeah. And but Ernie, you've been to so many places on our planet. We followed you. You've seen so much. And for many of us here in our country here, you're like our brother. You are our brother. You are our friend. You are our son. You are a pioneer for us because you've taken us into places that we could never even imagine or dream. And you showed us those places. And I know from my following your story and following you around the planet, one place that is on my bucket list I haven't been to yet is Patagonia.
No.
You showed us there over that place there that there's a tribe just like us. And I said, I got to go there. And I was supposed to go a couple of years ago, but this pandemic here stopped me. But brother, we just know that you've got so much knowledge, so much insight, so much to tell that we could share the whole night just with you around this campfire and not be tired of listening to your voice. So brother, thank you for coming on tonight. I know you're coming in there from Alice Springs.
I don't know.
Over to you.
Mungali, you might be Mungal is the morning light in the morning. In this time here, I'm in Naranda country here now, and in my language we call it Mungali. It is the same light as the morning, but it's the closing of the day. In the morning, that Mungal time, you are greeted by the light to give you strength for what you can do for that day. You are not judged until it gets to this time called Mungali, where it is the end of the day to see if you have accomplished what your mind had set you to do at Mungal in the morning. So I'm here, Epaya, from Aranda country here in Alice Springs. Drove like a madman to get here, but that's not the point. I'm here, I'm safe, and I'm drove, like I said, a madman, so I can have a yarn with you tonight. My name is Undamuro. Undamuro is from the Unda is shield. In Pindabi side, they say Jara, but Unda is a shield. Muru is the marking on the shield to identify the owner, like a little badge, or like this little badge I got here on my shirt. That's what a Undamuru is, and that's what my name is, Undamuru. I speak Wajari. Wajari is from the Midwest, Murchison region of the West Australia. And my nation is Yamaji, from Exmouth, Meekatara to Jurien Bay. There are 13 languages inside there. And one of the major languages in there on the coastal side is Wajari. And like most people off the coast, but started freshwater before the desert mob, we all hard-headed. And it's just a policy that we accept with grace, that most of us who are not saltwater coastal people, or we're not central desert mob, all on that fringe in the middle, we all got the biggest, hardest head and the biggest know-all thing in the whole of the country. And just go around and check all them mob and you'll see exactly what I'm saying. I'm very fortunate in my life. My grandmother delivered me on Auntie Rita's washhouse floor on a cattle station about 10:30 in the morning, some 28 years ago. Well, 28 plus 28 plus a few extra numbers chucked in there. And I'm very, very lucky to be one of those kids who I love listening to old people yarn, and especially in the kitchen. I wanted to be a chef, so I pretended. I want to learn how to cook because I knew that's where Nana and all the aunties were having a yarn and would tell all those stories. So I grew up around wanting to know those sort of information. And also, if I cooked, I have one sister older than me and 5 younger than me, then 3 younger brothers. But it's those 5 sisters, 1 above, 4 below, that I learnt to zip it. Don't get involved. If they're having a blue, don't try to be the big brother and tell them, man, to cut it out, you too, as the big brother. Now, both of them will turn on you and the third one will jump in for good measure. So I didn't argue in that department. So I kept to myself by listening to a lot of the old people around me. All station mob, we'd gone into town as fringe dwellers. And then we did after we were fringe dwellers for a while, we had to do the movement into, you're from the bush, you should have such and such a house. And here's one that we've prepared for you. And when you've learned to live in this one, you can move on to the next one. And when you've learned to live on that and, proved yourself in the community, you can move on to the next. It was very progressive, very slow. Native welfare was all right, but they had it back the front. We had too many Wedgwellers in there who were looking after us that much because it meant they were getting paid. And it didn't go much further than that. So a lot of us had gone back to the stations. My idea for traveling, as you said, Ray, I've circumnavigated 20 years with the great outdoors all over the world. And I know Patagonia in South America was such, Bolivians was Lake Titicaca is one of my favorite places when it comes to community. But I've been on the reservations in North America as well, out with the Blackfoot tribe and the Cree Nation up in Alberta. And I tell you what, those mob are exactly the same as us in every facet of the way that we think of. I know a lot of Black Australians like to identify with Black Americans, but I like looking at the Native Australian version of the Native Americans, because that is, to me, is a closer knit. Listening today, coming up here to Alice Springs, of Archie Roach's song, They Took the Children Away. And I remember being in Alberta, playing that song to the Cree Nation people there. And they were just sort of like, how does he know about us? And I'm going, brother, he doesn't know, but he's singing that about us back in Australia. And all they could do would do the identification, very much similar. So I have a very strong cultural background, a very strong traditional background. I make sure that as I travel across the top through the desert, I always go in and announce myself. If I see the red-tailed black cockatoo that will always show itself wherever I am and on any country, is to let me know that my grandmother is there and she's looking after me. Yeah, Uncle just went over the top then. So I love sitting down and having a yarn with a lot of these old fellas. And one of the things that I've learned, and I know a lot of younger viewers watching this might sound a bit stupid, but one of the best expressions I ever heard is, you learn more by never asking a question. So if you sit down with old fellas and ask them a question, you know, they'll tell you silly stuff to see what sort of person you are. That was a lot of questions that were answered in the old days, especially with the anthropologists who had gone out in the bush. What's this over here? Oh, that's so-and-so. And then left them with it, run away with that big note themselves that they just learned something. It wasn't until Daisy Bates had gone into the bush it learned that there is a strong women's side of the anthropological side of Indigenous culture, because all the men in all the anthropologists in the beginning were all men. So strengthen everything up to know that there are both sides. It's very important to know that there are both sides, but there also is more sides. Each blackfellow out this way, we don't have one name. These mob here, they call me Ernie Dingo, like it's one word, like one name, or skinny legs is usually the other one they call me, because yes, I've got desert legs. And that's been going on since about 1978. These mob here have been giving me cheek about my legs, and they're deadly legs too, because they still been carrying me all over the world. The importance of the relationship that we have with our names, our skins, our language, our law, our brothers, our brother-in-laws, our nephews, they all have names. The people you go through with, they all have names. They're teachers, they're old men, and even on the ladies' side, you've got, you know, all these different categories. So when you have a look at a tree that's standing strong, that's got 1 million roots down the bottom, those millions of roots that hold that tree up, the tree being you, is all them things, your connections to your language, your connection to your skin, your peer, your mother-in-law, all that is the one that stabilizes you as an individual, that will throw seed to those around you. And they're all strong too. So it is back to that natural thing of understanding who you are, where you come from, and how important is that? How important it is to breathe the same space or the same sounding words as your grandparents or great-grandparents did. I look at languages from where I come from. When you talk about your partner or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, our way they call it today, that's your mardong. And mardong come from about 50 years ago, it used to be mardongu, that's your mardongu. But prior to that, it was your mardongopa. And I think from prior to that, it was sound click martakopa. So martakopa become mardongopa, become mardongo, become mardong. I think that was just our Prime Minister making sure he don't listen to us. So having this watered down version that we are today, what are we going to have in regards to the future? Brother Leeton was talking about the grassroots and the knowledge of right way fire, the positive things that out of the fire. Have a look at the early paintings that the Europeans have painted. They painted what has already been fire farming, and how it's changed since those people have been moved on to missions or out of the way or other ways that they got rid of blackfellas in those areas. So it is important that we in order to protect this country from that, not from that old way, but via that old way, we need to look at the men and the women in our community who have that knowledge, who have a spark in that knowledge, and get them to come out on country, bring out all them scientists and them, because every time you come to meetings out in the bush now, they all want to go air conditioning. So a lot of our mob sit out under a tree, and when they sit under the tree, white fellas sit on a chair on the same height as our elders. And where I come from, that's wrong. That's wrong. They got to sit on the ground and look up to them old people. And that way, they're looking up to knowledge. They're looking up to the reality of life as it was around. Water is important. One of the things that I'm heard is that China is building all these dams all over China. There's something going on there from that old knowledge. We're not building dams in this country. We're allowing that flow off to go back into the sea. So all that knowledge from that aquifer that is under the ground at the moment is being brutalized and moved because of a certain ore they're going to send over to China to build those dams. We don't own this country anymore. We don't have a say in how it is placed, but we need that voice. We can't go to them Grannies in Canberra and to go up the top to or the division, because upstairs there's nothing up there. The air's thin and them are not breathing properly, but they would want to keep their job through whatever way they need to. And the people under, like I said before, the people, if you ever look at a rainforest, when them canopies set up the top, everything else underneath is protected. Government not like that. Blackfellow Way, everything's on eye level. Everyone's on eye level. You come out to the desert where we come from out here, you have a look at the trees out in the desert here. They all basically the same height. One big tall tree, then there's about 6 foot, 7 foot trees, then there's shrubs underneath, and then there's grass underneath. Everyone is all on the same level in their own fields. And it works. It has been working like that for 60 plus. The knowledge that is important is visible around us all the time. We're not reading it anymore. We're not seeing the importance of what them birds saying. Every morning, them birds calling out to you. That's somebody telling you. Old people telling you the message that you should be listening to. We don't know how to listen to birds anymore. We don't know their calls anymore because we don't study them anymore. You got magpies in your area. You have a listen to their call first thing in the morning. Oh, that's the sweetest sound you ever heard. But then an hour and a half later, they change that tune from a different angle, and they have sing a different song. And when they sing a different song, that's because the day is progressing. How much are you progressing along with it? So there is all this information around it. Brother was talking about before about the yellow flowers on them trees. You see white fellas go down to the chuck their lines in, no fish. Now chucking lines, no, getting skinny little one, getting tiny little bait sort of stuff. Black fellas seeing that the yellow flowers on the side of the hill, yeah, them mullets fat now, them salmon running now, let's go. Know when is the best time to fish. And we also know that if you go into a certain area where you think there's barramundi, you can try your luck out all day. You won't catch any until you make a blessing and a sacrifice to let them old people you know that you're there. And they will gift you one if you're good enough for being in the right place at the right time. They will gift you these things are not accident. These are, I caught a fish today. Yeah, it was an accident. But our way is talk to them old people. They know that fish there. That's somebody's totem. Give them the honor that they've given us, which is life. And in order to succeed further in life, we need to honor what we've learned to pass it on. To live in this environment and to acknowledge what we have around us is very, very important. Every time we look at another brother, look at another sister, it's not looking at them sort of like, oh, that's a possible girlfriend, boyfriend. No, look at them and say, read their face, where they come from. I was looking at Brother Leeton a minute ago. Yeah, you can see a bit of Islander in him. So you have that thing. And looking at Brother John, knowing Brother John from before anyway, and seeing that teeth, yep, I know what that means. That's not a bar fight on a Friday night. That's from business side. There are all these things that we adorn ourselves with. So when you see a sister or you see a brother in the street, look at them and work out in your head where they're from. What's their journey? So by the time you go, hello, sister, where are you from? And they say it, you can do those little ticks. What I loved about the southwest of New South Wales, around the Dunwich mob, around that area, Bobby McLeod was an old mate of mine from there. And one of the things that I learned was the lonely call. People don't do the lonely call anymore because the old teachers the young fellas haven't picked it up. That was a sweet tale. I would go into the southwest of New South Wales, and I'd hear that whistle, that lonely call. And I'd look around, and as soon as they see me turn that head, they go, yep, he's on his own, he's traveling through, we're going to check him out, see if you're all right. If you didn't respond, they let you go because you look like you know what you're doing. So those whistles, those sounds of our environment are very, very important. My kids, they've got their own whistles. They can be in the middle of a football field with about 1,000 kids. I'll whistle and they'll stop and come looking for me. Not that I'm, just because we dingo by dog name, that doesn't mean that I have to whistle to my kids, but there are little identifications that we have with each other to know who we are. And it's that connection that we have. You used to be able to look at blackfellas from all over the country in the 70s and 80s, look at them and say, he got a bit of younger in him, that fella there, younger boy. Oh, no, look at them legs, he desert breed. He got no meat on there. He got a little bump there and that's the knee. No calf muscles at all. But you'd have these different structure built for that environment. Warlpiri men were this strong presence. And it was sort of like, you looked at Warlpiri men and women and you sort of like, let's not messing around with that mob. Turkey Creek mob, Warman mob up in top of WA. There's been some great dancers all over this country, let me tell you. They used to have big festivals in the 70s, all over the country. I have never seen men dance like the men from Warman, Turkey Creek. Gulpilul's got that amazing presence when he dances, and there could be 20 naked people in the background. You wouldn't see them because Gulpilul, he just takes the attention. And Gulpilul did the devil dance, and very strong. The whole thing was absolutely breathtaking. And then I went over to Turkey Creek mob and I go, what do you mob think you're doing? And they used to get that 1, 2, but Turkey Creek mob used to go 3, 4, and you'd stop watching them dances, and never get the people from the Monya mob up in the top of Derby to dance for you, especially when they come out with their big art on their shoulders. Those buggers will bring rain anytime they start dancing, them mob. And all that cultural knowledge that's traveled from all over, seeing men, about 50 men with spears, we don't see that anymore. We only hear of it. And that's not that long ago. I'm not too old. I've seen these things. I've seen cultures. I've listened to Sami people in the top of Finland, Yoik, singing these songs like Buddhist monks sing, that the Inuits have the same style of songs, and them desert mob, when they're calling out that morning, their morning songs that they sing in the morning so that everybody can listen to that story in their half sleep. It's the same style. There is a big connection from all over the world. and throughout this country. We don't have, the thing that we have to be is not be defensive about the fact of who we are, because there is so much knowledge within each and every one of us because of the strings that we can pull to be ourselves. Our mothers, our fathers, our uncles, our aunts, our cousins, even if we have to pull in those non-Indigenous heritage and the strengths of them that we have in our body to make up who we are today. They might not identify with us, but we identify with them. We can't shut them out. Like they say, don't care how much milk you put in the coffee, it's still coffee. I'm talking too much here, right?
Brother, like I said, we could sit here all night and listen to you because you've got so much wisdom and so much to share. There are a few questions, actually.
Oh, is it? Yeah, I was just right. I'm heading up to a men's camp at the moment. We do men's health. I've got about, normally have about 25 swags in the back of my truck. Got a trailer that's got a full kitchen on it and all the swags and solar panels and stuff like that. And we go bush with the old fellas and they drag all the young fellas out there with us as well. They get out there and a bit of a sing-along and a dance-along, and then we sneak some doctors in to probe them and pinch them and all that sort of stuff. Because they won't go to doctors. No, I'm not going to doctor. I know I'm sick. You're only going to tell me what I know, so they don't go to doctors. But it's a lot of fun we do with men's health at the moment, and that's where I'm on my way to at the moment. I'm halfway there.
Actually, you bring in a very important point here about healing country and the issues around community health and community well-being, and that is one of the missing links is our men. What happened to us? I mean, I know you can trace it back to something like the Northern Territory intervention, picked on a lot of our men, but how do we get back to that? I just want to.
The most important thing at the moment in regards to our men is re-educating them as to who they were before they were taken away. A lot of our kids grow up without their dads because their dad's incarcerated. And that's what I mean by taken away. They're taken away from that family structure through some, sometimes it feels like a badge of honor to have time inside. And I shake my head at that because I spent a weekend in jail one weekend because I didn't pay my speeding fines. And that was sort of like, well, I'm a criminal now because I refused to land for the corners. But there's a different type of men who come out of incarceration back into the community because when they go in, they try and take a bit of who they are, but not really show who they really are because it may be some sort of offense that be taken against them on the inside. But when they come out, they bring out a bit of what they've learnt on the inside. And sometimes they don't marry up to where they're going into. And it's hard for a lot of our men at the moment because of the lack of opportunities that they don't think they have.
John, you got a few words to say about that?
I don't know if I've got a few words, if I've more got some questions, because I know Leeton, brother, you mentioned the idea of weapon, and we know that racism starts with language, right? So when the missionaries come, they took a word, ingada, that men and women of knowledge and all of our ngankari and all that, and they called him Christian pastor, or they called him, doctor. Ngankari is now doctor. So they stole them words. And I was in Bailey River not long ago with the men, and we do a lot of work with our men, and we make artifacts. All of our things that define us as men, like no different than what Uncle Ernie was saying just a second ago. Our shields and our watea and all our spears and all the things that, and our like our way curly, the number 7s and all that sort of thing. And I said to the men want to make some artifacts, make our men's things, and this one bloke said, "Oh no, we don't make weapons." All right, he said, "Oh, we don't make weapons," and I was like, "What do you mean? Oh, we don't make weapons?" You know, this sort of thing. And you know why? Of course, because our police station. You want to go see a museum? You go to police station on Community. In that evidence room, there's a museum of all the men's artifacts. You know, the things that have defined us. They've defined us forever and give us pride. And they're not weapons, but brother, how do you deal with that? Because this is the stuff that defines us as men. They're not, you know, they're not murderous machines we make. They're different. They're part of our culture, eh?
Yeah, that's it. They're part of our things. They're our cultural markers as well. So, you know, you walk into somebody's house, if they've got, you know, some kulamans or boomerangs or different things that they've made, you know, you can see whose house it is, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or same thing with paintings. But I think that that connection, and also slowing that process down, because I see it everywhere today, where we got bandsaws and angle grinders and all this stuff now, people making stuff, but to actually just sit there with an axe and a knife or some stone, with the right stone, and sit there and spend the days that it actually takes to make something and really connect with that piece of wood, the same as we'd connect with the country. When we're making those things, we don't have to rush it and things like that, but just actually bringing people back and slowing them down. And when we can slow down, we can think.
Yeah. I just saying, Brother Leeton, that I've seen
That's
these
my
old
answer
men
there.
up at Tennant Creek. These old men at Tennant Creek with the axe, and they would just, the axe would just go up and down in the one spot, but the wood, they'd move it over and just the axe would stay there doing the same chop, continual chop, and was yarning away, and they would move the boomerang as to what piece they wanted to cut, trim it down like, and taking off 1/4 of an inch at a time. And you know, we've only got 4 or 5 days with these blokes at the time, and it's just that patience and energy and conserving of knowledge and conversations that's going on at that time. And then they realize they're running out of time. But on the other side of our truck, we got all these power tools. We're going to finish it up. He's done. But I've seen some of the old men at Tennant make boomerangs, and these young fellas sitting there watching them making the boomerangs, and then old fellas saying, here, boy, you can have this. And they take it, and I'm going, well, you learned a bloody lot. You learned how to take. You could have sat down with the old man and made one with him. You're the best teacher right there.
Too hard, make me weak.
But
one word.
Sometimes
one
I
word.
wish I had a cattle prod or a taser. I tell you, look at the young one.
But with that one word weapon, they've redefined our identity for us. Just as the way they did with drunk, pedophile, intervention, same thing. Woman basher, they redefined the essence of our culture, and that's the difference and what we got to get to the bottom of.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they used to say, from an anthropological point of view, not an administrative aspect, but from an anthropological point of view, they would call it tools. So you've had, 3 or 4 different spears, club, Nalalagundi, Jurna, shield, stone axe, knife. They would be the tools of the trade, sort of thing. And I thought that was a better way as an identity, and I used to laugh about the fact that, where there's a lot of built up area, a bit of confliction, there was extra tools in there. And I think about them Tasmanian mob, they only had half the tools that we use up, especially in the desert side of it. So tools was a lot way, but as soon as you say weapon, and Ganji then, Kanji, Manaj, policeman, bullyman, whatever you want to call them, or you can't say other words that could get you
souvenir.
Yeah.
But they're a marker, like what Leeton said. I love that word, bro. I love that word you use. You said a marker. That's spot on. I love that word.
What do you mean by that, Johnsy? What do you mean by that again?
Well, Leeton said it. Leeton used it. So tell us, mate. It's the marker of manhood, the marker of strength.
So it's like something that identifies us. The same as the mark Uncle was saying before about the mark on the shield, and that identifies whose that is. It's the same sort of principle. With it, you can see and you can tell by the shape of some things too, where it comes from.
Here's a really hard, tough question for all of you. Do you think it's too late to save country with traditional care? Can we reverse the damage?
Hell yeah.
No, it's not too late.
See, that's the thing. We have got countrymen all over, not just from one spot, that can fix something. And that shared knowledge, you can put you mention any spot in Australia at the moment, and you'll get an option of 10 different countrymen who will have the knowledge to help in that area. We may not be experts, therefore, so we can get this offered. It's that shared knowledge that it will last a lot longer than, oh, you need to get in, oh, hang on a sec, that house on fire, you need a fireman. No, you don't. You need a couple of blokes. You don't need anything specific. But if there are all these different people who have knowledge how to do things for each area. And the thing is, we get a little bit too protective of who we are.
What about fire hose? Fire hoses.
Yeah.
Mom start making kumbo on it like this. Everyone start doing wee wee. Fire hose there, put it out.
Don't. No.
Another question?
Okay.
I cut you off, sorry.
No, you're good. I love it.
You have to cut me off. I'll run a mark. Sorry, Leeton.
Oh, but this is a good fireside chat.
All right.
What role should non-Indigenous people play in educating the young people about our relationship to country and how to treat it? Any resources they should look to?
Quick, let me get in first, and then I'll have a short one. One of the things, and Johnny, you'll back me up on this one. One of the things that I really, really can't understand is you've got some bloke who's gone to university to get a degree into being an expert, therefore going to be paid millions of dollars to go out there on country to teach blackfellas about being blackfellas. When he come out there with all these big law and degrees and stuff. But one of the things when he get out there, he got no one he can speak for. No one he can speak for except them mob back in Canberra. Well, bring them mob back out here. When you go on country, you got to talk to the countrymen who from that area and the proper protocol. When a policeman go out to talk in the desert to the mob, he got to realize that he's uninitiated. His word don't carry. Oh, I'm here on behalf of the Queen. Well, go and bring that woman here then. Bring her out here. We want to yarn with her. We want to get things done properly first time, one time. Bring her here. Oh, well, I'm here representing the government. Well, if you're here representing the government, it might as well say that I'm just a young boy here, uninitiated, and I'm speaking on behalf of all my old grand people. So if you want to have some downright something positive here, go and get that #1 ticket holder for the nation. Bring him out here. We'll sit down and yarn with him. Oh, he haven't got time. Well, we haven't got time to talk to you then. Oh, if you don't do as I tell you, you'll go to jail. Who's law? LAW or LORE? Come here, we put you in jail right now. You're here on our country.
I think
It doesn't work because one is trying to overpower the other. I'm sorry to be overpowering you as an old fella.
No.
I'm younger than you, though, right?
Pardon? You're younger than me.
I'm younger than you, though. That's right. Yeah. So that would be the main thing. Is but people who are going to come out on country understand the law and the language and the rituals of going out there. You can't just walk up to some old Pinnaby fella and tell him, "Oh, I'm from the government. I've come to tell your name is so and so. Yes, I've come to talk to you direct." No. You don't go and talk to him. You talk to his son, his nephew first before you can talk to him. You got to have an introduction. If you haven't been through,
that's even if you're lucky to talk to him. Don't expect you can talk to him.
But it's true.
It's sideways.
There's too much buffaloing the way in because they want a quick answer. Sorry, next question.
Well, you know what. Your way. The old nod of the head means our way. Piss off. Your way. Piss off. Yeah, piss off.
There's a lot of that been going on, let me tell you. Yeah. Those good old Jackie jokes, sort of like, "Hey, Jackie, can you tell me which way is the quickest way to town?" Yeah, you got a car? Well, yeah, I do. Well, that's the quickest way. Stop now. Oh, no, that's a Queensland joke. That's right. True. Do these questions? They can try and make some sense out of us. Come on.
Yeah, what can we do to make mainstream care and speak out against the ongoing discriminatory anti-intervention now so-called stronger futures or stolen futures? How can we get or stop stolen futures? How can we get it to finally end?
Johnny, give it them.
Right, Leeton, you got something? Because I don't think it'll ever end. So long as they're mobbing government, there's no representation in Parliament. They're making the laws, just the ones Uncle Ernie talking about. Them same mob. He pretty much paraphrased everything, every politician, every government advisor, every local charity that I've ever seen. He paraphrased exactly what they say when they come bush. Same thing. Yeah. They don't learn local language. They don't stay for long enough.
Today,
and by long, I mean.
Yeah, I've only got today between 3 and 4. I must have an answer. Well, after that, he won't be back till 5 if he catch anything at all.
I got nothing. I got nothing on that, Brother Leeton. What do you got? Because it's not going to change until we get in positions of power.
Yeah, I think the value has to shift. At the moment, the only value that is put on, even with the land, is an economic value, but it's just driving it into the ground. And it's much the same with people. We don't have a proper representation. And until that happens, and not just one fella sitting up there, until each nation is represented and people are put in by the mob, we're just fighting an uphill battle. But we need to have almost a similar governance, where we can govern our own nation, but also represent and go and speak with other representatives, whether it's on that state level or something like that. And then, people are actually put in who are elected. But at the same time,
it's like
there has to be that value of or understanding of protocol and law, and what should be there has to be that foundation. And that's got to sit above the other law.
Yeah, that was working with ATSEC. But a certain Prime Minister goes, "Oh, crikey, we better get rid of ATSEC." And he did, young Bob, young Johnny, not you, Rog. He got rid of we did have representatives. Back in back in the days, we had the right, those that led the right to vote. Foley, Perkins, and people like that who were involved in getting the community together. 1988, I've never seen that many blackfellas take up over the whole street and walk down the thing. And that's when we had a unity of what can be done by moving people.
Yeah.
You know, we need those voices. Foley had that type of the lad from Tassie, name just gone at the moment. They Perkins, you know, the freedom ride through Moree and stuff. We read about it, but we don't follow up with it. And there's still those negatives that go through there. We've had all these wonderful men and women with, you know, Ununuku with the poetry and Kevin Gilbert. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like you were saying before, Leeton, that you know, we train them up, and then who's going to take over?
Michael Mansell, yeah.
Ray, can I mention one thing? Because you've said to me that Uncle Bruce Pascoe was supposed to be on tonight and he couldn't make it. I think that's what you said, right?
Oh no, he was on Monday night.
Oh, Monday night, right. Because he needs to be mentioned, because what Leeton and Ernie have said there are two very powerful, important things. Leeton's talked about value, changing the value of what we see as important as knowledge. And Ernie's uncle there's spoken about, you know, how we engage, how politicians engage, governments engage. And I suppose the question was around, you know, how do non-Indigenous people do it? And the first thing that Uncle Bruce Pascoe tried to do is he used this thing, that paper more important than anything, right? Always has been, always probably will be, right? That PhD and all these things he's mob talking about. But Uncle Bruce Pascoe, he got their own papers, the papers that they wrote in their journals and in their observations and in their anthropological notes. And he said, hey, look, listen, you know, you fellas, we've been saying this for the last 230 odd years, and that black fellas, you know, we had civilized societies, and we had law and order, and we had fire, and we had knowledge, and we had this and this and this. But we've been saying it, but it's in your writing too. So if I present this to you in a book that's in a piece of paper, because that's what you think's important, right, then maybe you'll believe us. And sure enough, we did. And now they're rubbishing him and bringing him down, even though he's using the very evidence that they've used to observe us to prove that we were civilized as a society and a nation of many nations and all the government structures and all the agricultural processes and everything. And they've turned on him. And what have they done? They've cut his identity to shreds, and now they're cutting his evidence to shreds. So even if we produce even if they change their value, they would still condemn us, because their agenda is still genocide.
Yeah, I think we're also looking at maybe the wrong generation. Real change, I think, at that grassroots level will change from the education in the schools. When the kids are actually learning proper education about proper history, and they're learning from traditional owners wherever they are, then they actually start growing up with the perspective that becomes part of their experience. And then when they're older, making those decisions or choices, they're making those choices based on their experience that they've got. So that education is a big thing. And I see kids, I see a lot of kids getting around now, and they know more than a lot of 50, 60-year-olds ever knew about culture or blackfellas. But that's going to be the key to really to getting some change, is just with those young people.
Thank you.
That's an answer, right, bro? Educate your families, educate yourselves, educate your communities and your sphere of influence about the truth, if you want to be a real ally and a real partner in all of this. It's a good point, bro.
The other day I was out the front of the hotel. We're about to go up to the peninsula to have a yarn with a bloke called Bolo Angus, who's a beautiful man from up in the peninsula of north of Broome. And this girl was riding past on a bike as a film crew was about to get into our vehicles and take off. She came past on the bike and says, "Oh, hello," and waffling on for a while, that she's seen the program and she likes me for something I do on the television or whatever. And I said, "Oh, what you doing?" She said, "I'm over here at Notre Dame. We're doing Aboriginal studies." And I'm going, I wonder if black fellas can do white fella studies and learn about white fellas rather than... And I said, "Well, what are you doing in Aboriginal studies?" Today we're going to be talking about the stolen generation. And that's when I turned black. I said, "Bub, let me tell you something. There is no such thing as a stolen generation at all. And she goes, well, everyone says it's stolen generation. No, it wasn't stolen. They were fucking kidnapped. And I swore, I said, it's kidnapping. Kidnapping. That's our white fellow had labeled it to stolen generation. It was kidnapped. You don't do that to any other race of people. And she goes, well, I've never looked at it that way. And I was about to tee off, and I remembered I'm not a golfer, so I didn't.
Hey, listen, you fellas, we're going over time here. I'm going to have to.
Oh, come on, this
surprise,
fire's
surprise.
going.
I know.
Surprise,
I want to go all night, but
What's
They
this
wanna-
early?
they want to
It's not even
close us
daybreak yet.
down. These fellas.
Who's- Oh, which mob shutting us down now? Black or white?
Both. But look, we want to take all this knowledge and information that you've shared with us tonight. This has been a great fireside chat. I just can't get over the incredible, wonderful conversations we've had tonight. And I know that there's people out there who are just saying, thank you so much for this. We've got so many comments there that are in the chat room
Oh, good.
that are just so thankful for your input tonight. Others, they want you, Ernie, to go and speak here and speak there, so you better look at that. What's that called? Who's that mob? They want you to go and speak there. Ring them up. I know.
No, I'm not going to speak. They come and find me.
That's right. Yeah, let them come and find you. Thank
I've
you.
had my years of running around chasing
Yeah, good
everybody
on.
else.
Good on you. And so a lot of people are saying thanks so much. And yeah, you've been such a fantastic speakers tonight. I really appreciate coming on tonight. Just having a conversation. It's better than having some academic article or academic telling us all about this stuff. So thank you. It's been very, very rich and enriching.
I do love Leighton, what you're doing with that. I really love the fact that you are engaging in your or getting that, or finding your other identity within your identity, and the one that strengthens you on the inside that is may have been absent, by finding all these extra fibers that you are in your art and using the multitude of platforms. Brother Ray was saying that you're doing, printing them on this, and this, and I go, crikey, you get busy. But I love your zest for that, to make it stronger, for what like they say, there's more than one way to skin a cat, the old expression. But to utilize your art in all these different types of outlets, because if people are like that, people may like just a little trinket. Some people just want a big poster, or somebody wants something small, and the opportunities that you are doing with your art and also your crafts and with your teaching with those young fellas is giving it that extra legs and extra life, because it still all comes from within you, that have been implanted in there by the oldies before you, and those that have whispered to you, you know what, you should do such and such. So I'm very proud of you with what you're doing in that field. And Johnny, you and I have been mates in regards to this for years. I always have a giggle about a lot of the avenues that we work in, mainly because of the fact that blackfellas had the land and the Christian mob had the Bible. Now blackfellas got the Bible and the Christian mob got the land.
We're gonna have to close this down. This
Okay.
is a conversation, storytelling.
Yeah, because I'm running out of battery.
I love you all. Thank you so much. And I think Lisa's going to close us down right now. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for keeping us online there and keeping us
Thank
honest.
you.
Thank you, John.